Our special guest today is Paola Ruiz. She is from Southern California, but she is sitting outside on what you can see is a rather amazing day in the Boston, Massachusetts area. Hi, Paola.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. You have a really interesting story to tell that we had a chance to get to hear at a couple of major regional events in Southern California. But this is an opportunity for our e-club and for maybe other people and visitors to hear your story and why it's so important to Rotary that we have great leaders who we can continue to help develop, who will go on and do great things when, you know, we old people, you have to do great things for us next because you're the young people. How did you first find out about something related to this thing called Rotary? Where were you when all that happened?
So it was my junior year in high school, and it was one of the crucial times in high school because it's when you're starting to join activities and clubs. And the way that my high school is set up is we have freshmen on one campus across like a street, and then once you're a sophomore, then you join like the senior campus, which is 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So unlike a lot of people, I couldn't join a lot of clubs until I was a sophomore. But then it was junior year when I really decided what it was that interested me more and which clubs I wanted to be more involved in. So junior year, I heard about the Interact Club, and that's kind of how everything started off. So I went to a couple of meetings, and then I wasn't really familiar with what they did, but I heard that they had a trip to Catalina Island, and I was like, oh, I want to go on that. Sounds nice. And so I applied, and I got in, and that's kind of how it started.
Now, what was this famous trip to Catalina Island?
It was RILA.
RILA. So
the Rotary.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, okay. We were going to say the same exact thing. Rotary Youth Leadership, and then sometimes people say awards, and sometimes people say academy or different things. No one knows what the A means. But it's Rotary Youth Leadership. So this was your junior year in high school, and the Catalina visit, RILA event was coming up. It's usually around March or April, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So that year it was April. 16th.
Wow.
So it was,
okay.
well, it's kind of easy to remember because it was that same week that my mom passed away. So
and that was the difficult time you were going through because while all this was happening, you were taking care of your whole family.
Yeah, so I always like to be very involved in high school and, well, just in like my community in general. Like ever since I was in 8th grade, my mom was a part of a community organization at my elementary school, and that's kind of what got me started trying to be involved in my community. But freshman year, my mom got diagnosed with breast cancer, so I wasn't really able to join as many clubs as I wish. Same thing in sophomore year. It was kind of me taking care of her, taking care of my family. So even though I wanted to join a lot of clubs, a lot of times I decided not to because I knew that my family came first, and I had to make sure that like she was well taken care of, as well as my brother and my sister, before like any clubs.
Yeah, the most important thing was taking care of your family, and you were already put in a leadership role before you went to the leadership community.
Yeah, so at home, I was in charge of making sure my brother and my sister were up in the morning, feeding them, making sure they got to school. Then whenever I would come home, I would help my dad clean the house and make food for our family. And then it was off to pay the bills, usually like once a month, gather all the bills, make sure they were paid for, making sure my mom had all the prescription medication she needed, making sure that she had all the appointments to go to get chemotherapy, radiation, all of that good stuff.
And then this little thing called school.
Oh, yeah, and then there was homework.
Okay, just checking. So
Of course.
Yeah. So a lot on your plate, obviously, at that time. Now, during the week leading up to RILA, I recall from your story, but no one else watching this video knows this yet. That was when your mother's condition was getting worse, if I recall hearing.
Yes, so the Saturday before RILA, It was 3 in the morning, and we were laying down, but my mom started feeling sick because she was going undergoing chemotherapy. So she woke up and she told me she had to go to the restroom. So I helped her get out of bed and go to the restroom. And then she was coming back and she was really out of breath because like just even sitting up in bed caused her like a lot of fatigue and she was short of breath even though she was on oxygen. So I remember I helped her get up and then laying she was resting against the bed before she like every move that she made was very timed. So like first go to the restroom, then get out of the restroom, walk out to the bed, which was only like less than 10 feet away. And then it was kind of like she took a break before she decided to like get in bed because that really exhausted her. And we heard a crack. And so my first instinct was, oh, she laid on the bed too hard because she was overweight. So I was like, oh, maybe it's like the mattress. But then she's like, I feel something in my leg. And so when I looked, it was a crack. And you could see the complete bone wasn't sticking out, but there was definitely a lump. And that's when I was like, okay, we're calling the paramedics. So we called, and then they came and they took her to the hospital. And all I remember was, I live in a very narrow house, so they couldn't even get the stretcher inside of the room. So they actually made her walk all the way to the living room before they were able to sit her down on the cot, on the stretcher. And I remember, so my mom was about 250, I would say. And I had to pick her up and like move her to a chair, and then I rolled the chair across across my room because I didn't want her to walk. She couldn't walk. Her leg was broken. And then I just remember it really makes me upset because I keep remembering that they had to take off the oxygen in order for her to cross, and she was so out of breath. She's like, I feel like I'm suffocating, and she was calling out for help. And they kind of ignored it. They were just kind of like, oh, you'll be fine. We're going to get you on the ambulance. And it wasn't until like 3 minutes after she got on the ambulance that she started getting oxygen again. But by that time, she was already feeling like she was drowning, I guess, because she didn't have enough oxygen. And then we get to the hospital, and they started asking some really weird questions like, oh, have you signed your will? And I was like, no, she doesn't have a will. And so they're like, have you thought about making one? And we're like, no. And then they went and they took x-rays, and I asked the technician what was wrong because I'm interested in the medical field. And then she told me, well, you see that area right there? That's heat. And I'm like, well, what does it mean? And she's like, well, what happens when you have a fever? And I'm like, you turn hot? And she said, and is that a good thing or a bad thing? And so then after that, I kind of knew that things were going downhill. And so,
did you consider, this was the following week then that you were ready to go to Ryla? Did you start thinking about maybe you needed to cancel that experience and stay home?
well, that Saturday that I was in the hospital, originally when we had gone there, I was like, oh, well, it's just a fracture, so she'll have surgery and we'll be back at the house, and then I'll pack up for Ryla and I'll go. But once the technician told me, oh, well, you should see the heat that's going on right there in the x-ray, I kind of knew that it wasn't good. And then the doctor came in and said it was a pathological break, which I knew meant that it wasn't normal for her to have broken her leg. And I mean, I knew that since the beginning. So that's when I started, I couldn't really focus on Ryla. That's not what was coming up in my mind. But then that Sunday when I went to go visit her again in the hospital and I saw how sick she was, I told her I wasn't going to Ryla. And she was like, no, you're going to Ryla because it's going to be a very important experience for you. But I couldn't get my mind around anything other than staying there in the hospital with her. At that time, everybody was preparing themselves for something, but I didn't know what it was because I wasn't in the hospital all the time. I wasn't allowed. And so they kept making all these arrangements, and I didn't understand what was going on. All I knew was I wanted to be in the hospital with her. And then Tuesday morning, they took her back to our house Monday night. Tuesday morning, she passed away. and I for sure knew I wasn't going to RILA. So I went to my Interact advisor and I asked him if it was possible for me to go the next year as a senior. But the scholarship to go to RILA, because our Rotary Club paid for us to go to Interact, the way that they had set it up was that it was only for juniors so that they could come and share their experience with the rest of us. And that way the sophomores would apply and go as juniors to Interact. And it was kind of, they didn't feel that, they felt like senior year was a bit too late to be involved in that, which I understand now.
I will tell you, I don't agree with that, but I'm not in charge of their RILA. I think it's never too late to learn great leadership skills and have a great experience. I wish I could go to RILA as a student.
Yeah, I think I understand why they did it, because if you go to Interact as a junior, then you have the chance of being on the Interact representative group as a senior. So if I had done it as a senior, I wouldn't have had that opportunity to be part of the Interact district. So that was hard. And my family started flying in from Texas, and I was really torn between staying there and spending time with them when I knew they needed me the most, and helping my dad like with all the arrangements, or going to Interact, which seemed like a really fun idea, but I couldn't get the thought of having fun across my mind at a time like this. And so it was a Friday evening, and my friends were calling me asking me if I was going to go, because there were people lined up waiting for my spot. And so it was unfair to them that I wouldn't make up my mind, and I was still holding on to that. And so I decided to go, because I said that it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience that I didn't know if I would ever get again. And so that Friday night, I started packing everything and getting ready to go. And as I was walking out the door, and then I heard my tias talking about how they couldn't believe why I was leaving and going to go have fun instead of going and staying there with them and helping them through the process. Because it's very typical in Mexican culture to hold the 9 days after someone passes away as like in mourning. So it was like that those 9 days were like everybody kind of dropped what they were doing, and it was kind of like a lot of prayer, a lot of just a very emotional experience. So the last thing that was on their mind was for me to go and have fun.
It's interesting because it shows how similar we are even in our differences. There's that same period for the Jewish culture after someone passes, that there's a period of time where you focus on that and on the memory and on being together. But at the same time, you had spent so much of your recent life at that time taking care of your immediate family that it was positive for the family to take care of you by sending you to something that would launch your future.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm very thankful for, is that my mom talked to my dad before she passed away, like at the hospital. He told me that like recently, that she had told him that no matter what, that all she asked from him was to keep encouraging us and supporting us in our education, because that was the thing that mattered the most. And so thankfully my dad understood that, and he allowed me to go to RILA. Like, he didn't oppose it. He said that if I thought that was what was best for me, then that's what I should do. So that was really helpful.
So now you have made it to RILA. You're on beautiful Santa Catalina Island, all the way across the Pacific Ocean, not that far. What was the RILA experience for you?
So we get there and everyone's really happy. And I wanted to be happy, but I felt it was wrong for me to be happy. So I spent like the first day kind of isolated. Like, I didn't even talk to the people that went from my high school that much. It was kind of like I would participate in the activities, but I wouldn't really speak up much, or I would like just do what I was told type of thing. Like, oh, you have a group activity, everyone needs to be involved, and I would just do that, like the minimum effort in order for our group not to be like disqualified, but not really doing as much as I could. But then we had I forget the name of the activity. It's a really powerful activity where it's kind of like in the dark and people share their experiences. And I really wanted to share mine, but I just wasn't comfortable yet. But luckily for me, when we went back to our cabins, we talked with our cabin, and my cabin leader happened to be Melody. So there was no way getting around her.
Those of us who know Melody understand that very well.
Some girls shared a very, yes, so there was no getting around her. And it was kind of like, I was hiding, hoping she wouldn't see me. And she's like, you haven't spoken. And I'm like, well, and then I just kind of burst out and started telling everything. And it was really emotional because a lot of girls opened up as well. They were talking about their families. And then it was just a really powerful experience. And none of them knew me. I don't even think they ended up knowing my name because I was so quiet during that time. But it was amazing the type of support that I got from them. We all just hugged in a circle and acted as if we had known each other for forever. And that's when I started opening up for the rest of the camp. I started being more active in the groups and started talking out more. And I didn't share my story with everyone, but I didn't need to because Melody made sure everyone knew what I was going through, at least the adults. And it was amazing because at the end of the trip, she ended up gathering money to help pay for my mom's funeral. And it was really unexpected because you are at Catalina Island. There's nothing to really buy there at the camp. So a lot of people didn't take money, especially not cash. Maybe if you need money, you'll take your credit card. But she was still able to gather a lot, and I will forever be grateful to her for that.
You only said one thing that confused me. There are no adults in Rotary. We're all just big kids, but that's okay.
Okay. There's big kids. The big kids. She saw the big kids.
Exactly. So you came back from Ryla, and this launches you into your senior year of high school. So how did it come to be from there that now I'm sitting here with you and I'm seeing the Boston skyline over your shoulder? What happened?
So it was senior year, and during Interact, Kara, who was assistant representative at that time, talked about joining the Interact Club and getting to see the people that we had met there throughout the year. And so I remember I had talked to Jamie Sewell because she has a flower shop, and she had agreed to make the arrangements for my mom's funeral. And so I had been talking to her because she was part of the people interviewing the people that applied. And I kind of wanted to apply, but I was hesitating a lot because I didn't know what was best for me at the moment, if it was to start working and help out my dad make ends meet, because at that point he didn't have a job, or if I should take on another activity at school. And then he kind of encouraged me to apply because he said that I had limited myself a lot. I had kind of isolated myself from the world while I was taking care of my mom. And he kept telling me, is this what your mom would have wanted? And I knew that if she had still been there, she would have encouraged me to apply because she always liked seeing me active in the community. So I ended up deciding to apply, and I got the position as assistant representative for the district. And ever since then, I kind of I tried to do as many activities as I could. And one of the activities was actually speaking at the Rotary conference in Palm Springs, because Melody told Doug Baker about my story. And so I had no clue what I was doing. I was in a car with a bunch of other teenagers. There was a teenager driving. I didn't really know her. I didn't know any of them. And then they're all reading their speech on our way over there. And I'm like, wait, you guys wrote something down? And then I was like, oh, maybe I should write something down. So then one of them gave me a scrap piece of paper, and I wrote stuff down. And then we get there, and then it's my turn to talk, and I talked last. And I was really scared, and I kind of ended up not reading the paper at all and kind of just speaking from my heart, I guess. And it turned out really well because then they called me back again in February to speak at a bigger conference. And they gave me, by then I had already gotten accepted to MIT, but I was still not very convinced about coming to MIT because I knew my dad would have preferred me to stay like at UCLA, where I could go home every weekend and I could help out whenever something was needed at home. But Rotary gave me the confidence to come over across the country to a place where there's snow and it's cold, and I whine about it a lot. But
I agree with you. Go on. But it's been a good experience at MIT. Have you picked a focus? You're in your second year now, right?
First year.
Oh, you're still a freshman?
I'm about to finish my year.
Okay,
Finals are
that's
next
good.
week.
I don't know why I'm off by a year. So you're finishing your first year. So you haven't really chosen exactly where you're going with the MIT education yet. But what are you thinking you're focusing on?
We already declared our major. That
okay.
was last week. So I declared material science and engineering because my hope is to go to medical school someday. And instead of choosing like the typical biology, chemistry route, I don't know, something interested me about material science because I heard that one of the professors here has a lab designing a better and more effective way of producing skin. I think they're called skin grafts.
Yes.
And so I think that's amazing, especially for like people that have been have second or third degree burns, instead of like having to use their own skin and hurting them more than they already are, kind of like synthetically making more skin for them. I think that's a wonderful idea. So hopefully I get to work in her lab sometime soon. Maybe next year I'll apply. And yeah.
Well, if you consider not applying, I will send Melody after you, and you know what happens when Melody decides you're going to do something.
Yeah.
Well,
I still remember telling her at the conference, "Oh yeah, I got into MIT." And then she's like, "Well, why aren't you going over there? Is it the money?" And I was like, "No, I got a full ride scholarship." And she's like, "Then what are you doing? Still wondering what you're doing?" But yeah, she was really great.
Well, what's really exciting for us is when we see someone who Rotary helps. Rotarians are in the position sometimes to be able to help somebody who just needs a hand to lift themselves up. So here you are, having gone through the experience of RILA, having gone through Interact, you're at MIT, and I think what's most exciting for all of us Rotarians, I know all of us sitting at the PETS conference where I first heard you speak and met you, and now hopefully seeing this, we're just going to be really excited to see where you go with this and what you do with it. And the most exciting day for some of us will be when you are ready to join a Rotary Club yourself and feel what we feel. I mean, all of us have had a chance now to adopt people like you and you specifically. And we just are so excited to see where you go with this. So you're going to come home for the summer? Are you going to come home for the summer?
It's half and half. So I'm going because we're making a small party for my sister's 15.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm actually coming back here to Boston because I'm participating in a research project in Brazil this summer. So I'll be half in Brazil, half here.
Okay, so you're really not doing anything interesting this summer. Okay, just checking. Paola Ruiz, we are very excited that we had a chance to talk to you. We thank you for your time because you're probably a little busy in your first year in college. And
finals this week.
Just finals this week. Okay. Well, then stop talking to me and get back to studying, and hopefully we will have a chance to talk again soon and see what your next steps are.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you, Paola. We very much appreciate it, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.